Hey gardeners, it is late October and today I'm going to be talking figs. I know a lot of you out there that subscribe to this channel came here because of my interest in figs, sharing all the different varieties that I've grown over the years with you, tastings, things like that. You may also be new to the channel and wondering why I'm growing so many figs. So this video is really going to be my attempt at breaking down all the information that I've learned over the course of the last 5 years growing figs. So if you are in the Phoenix metro or in a similar climate, basically warm climates where you don't have too much rain, figs are going to do excellent in that circumstance. Now, if you're in a cooler climate, of course you can grow figs, and you can grow figs in any climate if you choose to do so in a container. But this video is really going to focus on our climate, since that's what I have experience with growing. There's lots of other fig channels out there that you can seek out if you're in a different climate. So, number one, why do I grow figs? Figs do really well here. They're going to fruit the first year for you that you put them in the ground. They're one of those instant gratification fruit trees. Also, up to about 6 years ago, I had never had a fig. And once I had my first homegrown one, I was hooked. There's a marked difference between what you can get at a grocery store and what you can grow on your tree. So if you're brand new to figs and you wonder if you like them, hopefully you know someone who's growing them and can try one out for yourself. So after my first one, I was hooked. I wanted to grow every variety. I have actually trialed 80 different varieties. If you are into growing your own food, for organic gardening, for health, nutrition, figs are an excellent one. My advice is, if you're brand new to figs and you want to get started growing one in your backyard, get one that's already rooted. So where a grower already did the work for you, rooted the fig. You generally can find fig trees throughout the year at local nurseries in the Arizona area. I've purchased from Richard's Nursery. I've also purchased from more specialty places like Tropica Mango out in Apache Junction. If you're looking for a specific variety or just more selection, online is a great place. And I've had personal experience with One Green World. They have very economical prices, healthy plants, lots of variety. So I'd recommend going one of those routes to start out. If you've been into figs for a while and you're looking to diversify, you can do a couple things. And both will be predicated on getting cuttings. As you probably know, fig trees are deciduous. They drop all their leaves when it cools down. When this happens and the plant goes dormant, this is when people generally will cut off scion wood or cuttings and sell them. One of my favorite places to get cuttings is from Figaholics. Harvey Guerra out in California, he has a fig farm there. Hundreds of varieties. He's done amazing work putting together, all the details of the various varieties. He's even done tastings. So definitely check him out if you're interested in cuttings. They usually come available in January. And I am not affiliated with Harvey at all. I just am a big fan of his. And I've had a lot of success with his scion wood. So I recommend that. And also, even though California is not our climate, it's pretty close. So it's good to get your cutting wood from a similar climate. It's going to mean that your figs are going to do better since they're acclimated a little bit more into our temperatures than if you were to get it from a completely different climate, like, let's say, Florida. So when you get your cutting wood, you can do a couple different things. You can root them, so you can root a whole new tree and container grow that or put that in the ground. Or you can use that to graft. Grafting is a really nice way to go because that way you're not having to care for another in-ground tree. You're not having to take up that space. You can leverage the tree that you have and graft on different varieties to different scaffolding limbs and get what people refer to as a frankenfig. So have a many-in-one variety tree. So get that diversity without having to go through the care, the extra water, the extra food, all that. You also, of course, extend your season because each variety is going to ripen a little bit different than the others. Okay, let's talk variety now. Make sure when you're getting scion wood or getting a plant that it's a common fig type. You don't want to get a San Pedro or a Smyrna fig. Those require different things. You want a common fig because what that means is that it's self-fertile and you need only that one plant. And on common fig types, there are hundreds available. So which one do you pick? It's really difficult for me to tell you what variety to get. There are different types of flavor profiles out there. You know, real broadly, you can get a honey fig, sugar fig, or a berry type fig. I'm one that really enjoys berry type figs. I don't really care for the single noted sweeter varieties. Some people do. So read the descriptions about the flavors. A lot of people put out tasting videos that may help you decide. If you can, I'd recommend a closed eye variety that's going to prevent spoilage, even though we don't get a lot of rain. This last summer was an exception where we did get a lot of monsoonal moisture. That's going to cause more issues in a variety that has an open eye. Having a closed eye variety also prevents bugs from getting in there and spoiling your fruit. Some people will argue that you should go with a light-skinned variety because the birds won't notice it as much as the dark-skinned. You can go that approach, but believe me, birds are smart. They'll figure it out eventually, and it really doesn't make a difference there. What I will say about light-skinned varieties is they do tend to sun scald. Varieties like Cadota, White Marseille, my LSU Champagne. The other thing to consider with varieties is whether it's, you know, an early, mid to late season variety. Now, because of our climate, it doesn't matter so much. But if you really want to maximize the number of harvests that you get from your fig tree, I would go with the early to mid season variety. If you go with the later season variety, you'll still get fruit off of it, like Panache Tiger, but just know that you're not going to get as many crops come in. You probably only get one, maybe two, if we don't get that cold set in early in winter. You know, if size is something that you're worried about, if you have a very small area, you might consider looking at dwarf varieties. So Chicago Hardy is one that comes to mind. The Pistilier that Rain Tree Nursery puts out is another one, you know, that will stay fairly small. You're going to have to prune your fig trees anyways to keep them from getting too big if you want a lot of fruit. But if you're looking for something that's staying fairly naturally small, those are two options. Little Ruby's another one. Out on my channel, I do have a plant list that includes all of the fig varieties that I have culled or gotten rid of, as well as the ones that I am growing. Their rankings, again, according to my own personal, you know, opinion. So take that with a grain of salt. Everyone's opinion is going to be different. So we've talked about where to go to get fig trees, what varieties you might be interested in. Now let's talk about size. So on size, if you can, I always encourage going smaller on fig trees because they are very aggressive growers. There's really no value add to getting a larger size. If you get a 1 gallon, it's going to root very quickly. It's going to get acclimatized to your soil very fast. You get something that's been in a container for a long time, chances are it's root bound. And if it's root bound, it's not going to grow for you right away. It's going to take some time. It's going to be stunted. So you might have more branches with that. but your tree is not going to grow as fast. I've had 1 gallon size plants grow faster than a 5 gallon or larger size. The one exception was because I was so impatient and wanted to graft right away and didn't want to wait a year for my small 1 gallon start to grow into a big tree. I went and bought one that was already in a 15 gallon, and that was my Texas Everbearing. It had tons of scaffolding branches already established, and I wanted that right away. I didn't want to have to wait. So that's one situation where you may go big on a fig tree. But it's probably better to just be a little bit more patient as they do grow so quickly and just wait it out. The tree I happened to get was healthy, it was not root bound, so it turned out pretty good. I'm going to walk you through care aspects next, and I think I'll show you the tree so that I can speak to the points and show you as I'm going. So we'll cover location, planting, fertilization, and watering. When it comes to finding a location in your yard for a fig tree, pick one that's warm. Pick an area where the tree is going to get a good amount of sun all day. Fig trees are going to want 8+ hours of sun to really put the fruit on. You can see the tree in front. This is actually the Texas Everbearing that's in ground. It has over 12 different varieties grafted onto it. And you can see there are no trees that are, next to it that would cast shadow on it. And because it's got a good amount of sun all day, it's putting on fruit. The branches are covered in fruit. You can see that there is a wall nearby, and it's, I would say, 5 feet away from the trunk. Not really an issue if you're worried about the fig tree's going to knock down the wall. Not really going to happen as long as you keep up on pruning. Similarly, this is my LSU champagne that's in ground. All of the branches on it are all grafted. And it's also south exposure, so it's getting a good amount of sun during the day. Doing quite well, lots of fruit. Let's take a look at an example of a tree that's not doing so well and its location. This is a Bourgeois gris, and it is completely cast in shade. The white sapote has really grown in, that's next door to it, and it's canopied over it, so it's not getting the benefit of any sun. Also, there's a key lime that's to the right of it, and it's also blocking out all the sun. So the only sun that this fig tree gets is at the very, very top. As a result, there's no fruit on this tree. It's not getting enough energy from the sun. So my experience has shown me, don't plant a fig tree in the shade. And I mean at all. It's not one of those fruit trees that needs afternoon shade. It's not a mango. Figs are grown in very hot, arid climates, and they do not need to be babied. Let's talk a little bit about planting. As with any tree that you plant in the ground, you're going to want good draining soil. So when you dig your hole for your planting, what I tend to like to do is go double the width of the container and pretty much the same depth. You can go a little deeper on the depth, but don't go too far because your tree will have the tendency to sink, and the crown of the root ball will be under soil, which is not good for oxygenation to the plant. So, dig your hole, as I mentioned, those dimensions, fill it completely with water and check to see its drainage. If the water drains within an hour, you are good to go. If it doesn't, keep working at it. Keep filling that hole with water until you achieve good drainage. Could take a few weeks. Now, when you're ready to actually plant the tree, what I like to do is take half of our clay soil out of the hole. Use that to berm up the tree or just move it somewhere else. And then in place of that, find a good organic cactus soil and put that into the ground, mix it up. Also like to put in some mycorrhiza, that's going to help with the root establishment. Mix that all in. Then when you plant your tree itself, I would plant it slightly above grade, 2 to 3 inches above grade. That tree will settle, sink, in time. When it comes to fertilization, what I really found to be successful was my first year, I really went at the tree with food. I used a fish fertilizer, I used the Alaska brand, there are others out there, but fed that tree, and they were quite small, 1 gallon plants. Every 2 weeks I would give it food, and it grew massive as a result. I get that fish fertilizer stinks, it attracts flies. It's not time released, so you have to apply it more often. You will get phenomenal growth if you use that method the first year. That was my secret for getting these trees really established fast and growing huge. Year 2, you can change things up. What I did was switched off of the liquid fertilizer to a granular. I went with Dr. Earth's fruit fertilizer. There's E.B. Stone, Kellogg's, lots of different OMRI certified fruit fertilizers you can go with that last around 2 months. And so at that point, I was feeding every 8 weeks. Year 3, more of the same, maybe only fed 3 times a year. Now I have chickens. I have 2 hens and they provide organic fertilizer. I also grow Mexican sunflower, which I just did a video on. If you don't know, you can actually harvest the plant and use that as a good nitrogen base fertilizer. So you can chip that up and spread that down below in your tree to fertilize it. So I don't purchase fertilizers anymore for these fruit trees, but that's really just a rundown on how I have fed from the time I first started growing these trees, and I've had really good success with that. I've never had disappointing fruit set on the figs. Let's talk watering. Always a fun topic, and that's because it's so variable. There's conditions, in your yard that I don't necessarily have in mine, and vice versa. I'll tell you what I did in general, which is the first year, these plants are tiny. They have small root systems. They're very close to the trunk. What I recommend year 1 is to frequently water your fig tree, but you don't need to put down a huge amount of volume, right? It can't uptake all that water. So my first summer, I definitely watered every day my fig trees. It's going to be really difficult to overwater a fig tree in our climate. Not true in other areas where they get a lot of natural rain. We don't have that here. Just don't ever let your fig tree dry out the soil. That can really shock a young tree. Fig trees grow vigorous. They need a lot of water and a lot of food their first year to get established. When it comes to year 2 and beyond, once the tree is established, you can start backing off that frequency and putting down more volume. So that's when you can start, taking a hose and basically just put it under the tree there and let it run. You certainly can use drip irrigation, just put on a proper head. I keep seeing this in social media where people are saying, oh, you can't grow fruit trees on drip. That's what I'm using for this whole yard, is a drip line. I agree that you don't want a drip emitter that is 1 gallon per hour. That is a no. But I've got emitters that you can get on Drip Depot that can go up to 16 gallons per hour. Make sure you're putting down a good volume of water to these trees and they're going to be happy. Obviously, the bigger the tree is, the more water you're going to want to put down. is extremely important when it comes to fig trees. I've mentioned a couple times, they're very vigorous growers in our climate. As a result, in a given year, your fig tree can actually put on 10 to 12 feet of growth. That's not all that uncommon. If you leave that growth for next year, it's going to just add on, right? It's going to branch at the top there, at its top height. It'll put on another 10 to 12 feet of growth, and then you're up here. Unlike cooler climates, where their fig seasons are quite short, ours is long, and we really care about main crop. That's where the majority of the fruit's going to come in. Because of that, you're going to want to prune your trees hard every winter when they go dormant. Prune them down to waist height, thereabouts, and it will cause a plethora of new branches to emerge, and those branches will be productive with fruit. And the added benefit is the fruit will be in your reach. It's not going to be way up there for the birds. Let's talk about fruit a bit. One, the pests that can take your fruit. Your biggest pest is going to be birds. They love figs, and they may not be aware of them when you first plant the tree, but they become aware. And if you do not protect your fruit, they will get it before you do. So what I would suggest, there are different options. You can net the whole tree. You could build an enclosure around your whole tree, like a fruit cage. Both of those seem a little extreme to me, and at least with the netting, you could unintentionally harm other animals, like lizards. You could actually harm birds, which is not my deal. So what I found is party favor bags made out of organza material. They sell them on Amazon, different places. You can get that. You can individually bag the fruit to detract the birds. I have found on occasion, like mockingbirds in particular, will actually pull down those bags to the ground, knock them off, and then rip through the fabric and get to your fruit. A better method is to get a really large bag, the largest that they have, and bag the entire branch. I've had some birds actually sneak through the bottom where it's cinched in and gotten caught, where I'd have to release them. But 99% of the time, it's not an issue. And the birds won't touch it. You can reach in there, harvest your fruit, not a problem. Another thing that I want to stress when it comes to fruit is the need to come in several times a year and pinch the apical bud off of each of your fig branches. If you don't do that, what the fig will tend to do is favor vegetative growth, like this panache tiger is doing. It is going way up. And it's because I did not pinch the buds. When I pinch those buds, it forces all the energy to go into fruit production. That's a really important tip if you want to maximize the fruit you get. One thing that you will definitely want to do, not just for a fig tree, but fruit trees in general in our climate, is put down a good amount of wood chips around the tree. That's going to help with water conservation, less evaporation, and it's also going to help condition your soil. If you have rocks near your fruit tree, definitely scrape that back. That radiant heat is going to harm the tree. It's not going to do it any good here. If you're in a cold climate, that might be, a little hack on creating a microclimate that's warmer. But here you definitely don't want rocks around your trees. Covered a lot of topics in this video. I'm sure I've covered these all separately in other videos, but have been asked to do a comprehensive kind of fig care video. So hopefully this helps you, especially if you're new to figs, getting an understanding of all the components. All in all, fig trees are really simple to take care of, not much to them. They're one of those more fuss-free trees to have. Hope you enjoyed this video. Happy gardening.